again to another episode of the Pulpit live stream talk show. We're here for, this is Wednesday again. The week keeps flying by so fast, eh? But it's good. It's all good. How's everybody doing? Okay, so here we are. Today we want to deal with one of the things that, we talk about the individual a lot and self-development, right? That's what we're all about. We're about maximizing our life and designing our future, authoring our future, and maximizing our potential. But you can't do that. A lot of people who go out in the world say, I won't name names, but a lot of people who go out in the world to inspire people and motivate people, they kind of end up in kind of a box, right? You're in this space that is divorced from context, from the rest of the world. That, if you're all about the inspiring life or the motivating life, coaches, mentors, a lot of people don't incorporate the state of the world. But we at the Pulpit Life, to live the Pulpit Life, we have to incorporate, we have to consider every aspect of the human being, right? People who are working with us, people who are coming on board with us, our team members, our shareholders, we ourselves. One of the key things I have to do for our company to thrive and to move forward, for our vision to move forward, is to constantly update myself, and it comes from my journalism background as well, but it's also necessary for the path that we've chosen for this vision of the Pulpit Life, that we must keep updating ourselves on our context. So I want to deal with this quickly before we get into what we're talking about today is COVID. And what's happening with COVID now, or what's going to happen after COVID, post-COVID, which we all thought would be now, but look what is going on in Europe, and it seems to be spreading everywhere. So eventually it could end up here and in America and different places, and globally, just like last year, right? Remember last year winter when the whole place was a massive COVID shutdown. The pandemic really affected everything last year winter and the 2020 winter. Sorry, last year was 2020 winter. I'm going ahead of myself. But we're going to talk about COVID today, but I first of all, I want to emphasize that context. You have to look at your life within a context. And of course people do that, but they do that on a superficial level, right? They surreptitiously look at life and think, okay, that's what the news said, that's what's going on in the world, but they don't apply it to their life. And that's what we want to encourage. We want to encourage ourselves to apply whatever we see going on in the world. However, not the surface stuff of what is going on in the world, not the perception stuff, the deep stuff, substantial stuff, right? Which is what we're concerned about. So life has different concerns, and one of the concerns that we should concern ourselves with, right, is the context in which we live. Not only, and today's world is not global anymore. I mean, we live in a world that say short global, but really, truly, if a mosquito sneezes in China, which I hope hopefully that doesn't happen. I don't know if mosquitoes sneeze today. If a mosquito sneezes in China, the market in America, the New York Stock Exchange, is shaken. That's the world we live in. We live in my point is it's a kind of a silly metaphor, but we live in a global village, and whatever happens in one part of the global village affects the other part. East and west, north and south are now so connected, and us individuals, we might think we're small, we're nothing in this grand global scheme of things, but we're affected. If there's a supply chain hold up, even if one, like we saw with the big ship that was stuck in the Panama Canal, it affected the entire world. One ship with containers on it was stuck for a few days, and it stopped everything in the world. Like grocery stores couldn't get food stuff, and builders, construction people. The global supply chain, and this term, the global supply chain, sounds, I don't think it expresses what really is the situation in a concrete way. It's very abstract, right? But what it means is all the goods that we need in the world, not services, but goods, are held up somewhere. Like outside of California, they have hundreds, thousands of ships are waiting to go to ports to offload their cargo, right? And Biden talks about it, President Biden and other people, right? They use supply chain bottleneck and hold up. And so my point is, everything in the world affects everything else. And you as an individual, I as an individual, you must take into consideration the global situation. In other words, our context. We need to take into consideration our context. Our context is important. It's just like online, right? You have content. You have a lot of content, but you got to place that content within a certain context. And what has been happening, especially with Facebook and social media, is that a lot of people take things out of context. So somebody would post something, and like QAnon, for example, became of this global movement because a lot of it was being taken into a context of conspiracy theory, and the government is out to get everybody, threatened, and they're going to blow up our population and reduce our population. That if you put things in different contexts, it delivers different meaning. And so we have to consider the importance of context. The biggest context we face today, of course, is the global context. And what is going on globally is affecting every individual, every single human being on the planet. Maybe we never thought we would live to see this day, where one event affects every single human being. It happened before, of course, in World War I and the Black Plague and the Spanish flu, and in the 40s, 30s and 40s, World War II. All those things had a ripple effect globally, right? They were literally affecting everybody, but even communism didn't have the kind of impact on every single human being. There were parts of the world that was immune from communism, right? Even though a lot of it had a ripple effect in American Western nations and stuff. But my point is, the pandemic, COVID, has had a tremendous impact on just about every single human being on the planet. And this is it's devastating, but it's also very, very instructive. And so today we're going to spend the hour of the show not talking about the individual and how do we design our path forward and how do we author our future, but the context of our show is that, right? We just want to show that we can't do that effectively with good impact unless we constantly consider the context of our world, of our environment, not the natural environment, but social environment, which of course, has to do with natural environment as well. And so today we want to focus in on what really is going on with COVID, because a lot of people are confused, right? And one of the things we do in being aligned to this idea that we have to take into consideration our context, which today is the global village, right? It's a global context. The individual fits like a puzzle in the global context. We have to look at the big picture. We have to look at the big picture. If we don't look at the big picture, we miss out. We panic. We don't know what's coming. And so part of what we do is mentoring and coaching people is not only offering self-development stuff and all that, our books and our writing and everything, but also we have a branch of our company which delves into the future. As you know, our whole philosophy is about the future. But we look into, we have a goal that we must know what's coming in the future and prepare for it, right? And the study of the future is called futurism. So I'm a student of futurism, right? I keep reading books on what is coming in the future and preparing for it. To the extent that I did something that is outside of my own expertise, which is with a friend of mine, Christine, who's very interested in tiny homes and stuff, and she actually lives on a houseboat in Lake Ontario. Beautiful, nice houseboat she bought and retired there and lives there year round, insulated and everything in the heat. It's beautiful. I visit and I have chats with her. Amazing lifestyle. So we formed this company called Sales Home, Sustainable Innovative Lifestyle Homes, to bring smart homes to buildings and stuff. Because why did I do that? Because it's the future. Each building, whether residential or commercial, has to be a smart home. in the future, in a very near future, within years, right? Within a couple of years. Cities will change their bylaws, countries will change their bylaws, that so-called dead buildings or pollution generating buildings will have to upgrade and bring in smart technology. And we see it already happening with Alexa and Google Nest and all those things, but also screens and the metaverse and stuff. Homes will have to redesign themselves, and so we know that future is coming, and we register a company to take advantage, not take advantage, but to be on the ground floor of the opportunity that is coming. And I'm just making a point that we are futurists. We study the future, which is called futurism. The study of the future is called futurism. And the reason we do that is because we take into consideration our context, which is the rural village and where the rural village is moving into. And that you benefit from this kind of thing if you come on board with us to live the quality life, to develop your intellectual property into your message, your community media, which goes global, like we talked about yesterday, and of course, cooperative money to membership and royalty, passive income, and all those things. So, I want to emphasize that we look into the context in which we live. And the reason we do that is that we're well prepared for the kind of future that we're moving into. In fact, we're well prepared not for the future we're moving into, but the future that is rushing towards us, because that's what happens. Tomorrow rushes towards us. We think we're moving into tomorrow. Not true. Tomorrow is rushing towards us. The future is coming towards us. It's going to hit us whatever we do. And a key part of life is preparing for that future. Know what the global village is. Know what your community is doing. Know what's going on around you. And prepare for it. Now, it used to be easier to do when we had mass media. Now we don't have mass media. We have, sorry I keep checking my phone every show, but I when I get a notification, here's the thing with me, if I get a notification on my phone, except in the night because I put it on silent, don't want it to disrupt sleep, right? But during the day, if I get a notification, I think it's courtesy, and I think it's being polite and respect for the person. I would look at my notification, and I would at least respond and give thumbs up or say I'll talk to you later or something, or like it or something. Because that's courtesy. Somebody takes their time out of their day to send you a message or to share something with you on WhatsApp or Instagram or wherever. It's good to have some courtesy and respect that person. It's like if you're walking on the street and somebody says hi to you, and you ignore that person and walk off. It's rude, right? The same with social media. Somebody, and this is maybe part of our training too, how to relate to people. Somebody sends you a message on social media and you get the notification on your phone and you see it, just acknowledge it. You don't need to answer, you don't need to do anything, just acknowledge it and say, you know what, I respect the fact that you contact me, and I'll get back to you when I can, right? That's all. The only thing I don't do is answer the phone because I'm not a phone person. But I will message the person instantly and say, I saw your call, I'll call you back when I can, or whatever, right? To respect for human beings. And it also aligns with what we're talking about, which is always consider your context. The context are the people around you as well. Show them respect, show them courtesy, show them love and kindness, don't ignore people and be rude. If you're in a place and somebody says hi to you or hello or they share something with you, you will never absolutely ignore that. So why do you do it on social media? We need to change these kinds of human behavior, right? Social media has made people rude and very unkind, really inhumane even. But anyway, my rant, my rant. Today we want to look into our context, and the main context of our life today is COVID, and COVID is global, and COVID affects every single human being on the face of this planet. Maybe for the very first time in history, every single human being. No matter, I wonder if the tribe, what they call the lost tribes, or the untouched, maybe tribes like the Andaman Islands of India. Those tribes are not part of the world we live in today, right? You can't even visit there. I wonder if they're affected by COVID. Nobody knows because nobody could go to these places, or the tribes in the Amazon and different places who are outside of mainstream society and unreachable tribes, they call them. I wonder how they're coping. But every human being on the planet, in the world that we know, has to face this pandemic and this COVID situation. Today I want to talk about that, right? right? We want to talk about COVID from the perspective that that's our context. Without COVID, without context, we can't talk about our self-development because context is important. We can't go to somebody and say, live the quality life if, excuse me, they're 99 years old. I mean, they can, of course. But like my granny is 99 years, but she's turning 99 in January. And I can't go to her and say, hey granny, we have this new thing called Zib's book and we have, she's 99 years old. We have the quality life, or let me coach you, let me mentor you. Maybe she would be open to it if she has Alzheimer's. So of course it's hard, but you know what I mean. Not everybody would be open to live something like the quality life, or to self-develop, or to contribute to the world, or to alter their future, design their life. Not everybody is open to that. Not that everybody is not open to it. Not everybody is able to do it, right? Or capable of doing it. But we still have to consider the context. Like my granny, who's 99 years old. I, as her grandson, I still have to consider the context and say, make her life as comfortable as I can, right? Or everybody around me, including the people that we bring on board and we mentor, and we coach, and we teach. If we don't know the context, how can we make your life easier, right? How can we promise you that you can alter your future when we don't even know what that future looks like? So a lot of people are facing the world today, and COVID is the major context out there, and a lot of people are confused. They have no idea what the future holds. They have no idea what tomorrow holds. So Europe decided, Austria, Germany, different places in Europe decided they will shut down again because COVID is, and today, I think in England they said that there's a new variant of COVID coming out, and it has many branches and stuff, and I shared it on Facebook. So COVID is still with us. COVID is still with us, and it's ramping up. In Europe, what is going on in Europe, it could very well spread around the world, including here in Canada and the United States of America. So I want to delve into, because last year we did delve into shows, not the 1 hour daily shows, but we delved into shows where we talked about COVID, why COVID was happening, and I think the mayor of Oshawa and I talked about it a lot in our conversations on the show, but that was sporadic shows, right? Since we started doing the 1 hour a day, we haven't really talked about COVID because it actually eased up, and I thought, there was a good chance that it's gone, but we don't have to deal with it. But here it is again, so we're going to deal with it. So let's take today off from talking about the individual designing their life and altering their future, and let's talk about the context in which the individual is functioning today, which is COVID, or which is a pandemic. That is, the pandemic is not a benign thing. It's a very scary thing. It's fearful, right? How governments are reacting and how society is reacting. So when these European countries, including Germany and Austria, of all places, shut down, and France as well, France even threatened to shut down. They said they might not fully shut down, but still people swarmed the streets. Throughout Europe, tens of thousands of people went on the streets protesting. You know why they're protesting? They have no clue what's going on. Why is government shutting us down? Why is COVID causing the government to shut society down? You don't need to shut society. This is what the protesters are saying. And last year we had, even earlier this year actually, we had big protests in Canada. Every city in Canada, and also in America, right? So people are protesting all over the world. And one reason that they're protesting really is because a lot of people are confused. The masses, the crowd, the rabble, the voters out there, the public, people are confused. Because the mass media doesn't really say what's going on, right? So that's what we want to deal with the show today. Why COVID, and what is going to happen, and why is it rearing its head again? Why is it coming up again? And last year we dealt with why COVID happened. So here's my theory, and all I'm giving here is my opinion. I'm not saying this is cast in stone and somebody might have a different opinion, but what I'm saying here is based on my research as somebody who researches the future and who delves into futurism. This is what I came up with, right? So the reason COVID is happening, let me show you something. This book, I don't know if you can see the title of the book. Mark Carney, Values. This book was published earlier this year, right? Remember that name, Mark Carney, and the name of the book, Values. This is because we're going to talk about, he has a big role to play in COVID. So Mark Carney used to be the governor of the Bank of Canada, the Central Bank of Canada. So he ran the banking system in Canada. And then he was called after, he was promoted, first time in history that a Canadian central bank governor was promoted to be the British central bank governor. So Mark Carney moved from Canada, he's Canadian, as the head of the banking system in Canada, and he did a phenomenal job when there was a kind of a depression, not depression, but there was a market problem in 2008, 2009 and stuff. US suffered a lot from it. Canada didn't, because this guy's leadership was so amazing at the Central Bank of Canada. And so they promoted him, he got a big job at the Central Bank of Britain. So he was running the British banking system, which is the most sophisticated banking system and most wealthy in the world. Now this guy, Mark Carney, who was running the world's banking system, mind you, is the guy who is in charge now of the clean climate agenda in the world. There's a reason I'm saying this today. We're going to get into it. So Mark Carney was the man who kind of put together the agenda and the thinking behind the goals and stuff for COP26. COP26 was held, if you remember, earlier this month, the first 12 days of this month, in Glasgow, England. And every single 200 world leaders showed up at this Clean Climate Summit in Glasgow, England. The name of it was COP26. It was all over the news. If you missed it, then you really need to listen to the show to consider the context of the world in which we live. Because that context is impacting us personally, and we need to know what that context is. And so, Mark Carney took charge of COP26, gathered 200 world leaders together, brought them to England, to Glasgow, and said to them, let's clean up the world's climate, right? Noble goal. But he didn't take on the actual day-to-day executive leadership of COP26. He passed it on to some other guy named Sharma or something, who absolutely failed to bring about any real substance, any real result, any real outcome or impact from COP26. So here you had 200 world leaders showed up in Glasgow, gathering together, talking, and they didn't come up to any real agreement. People said, oh, we're going to go to net zero pollution by 2035, by 2050. A lot of people say 2050. So it's way out there. They're making promises and they say we're going to do it. And this young environmentalist from Sweden or Switzerland, Greta Thunberg, was there as well, of course. She would be there, and she and David Attenborough. And they were both upset. And she said, the world leaders are going blah, 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 and they're doing nothing, which is true. They make a lot of promises and nothing come out of it. So the reason I'm mentioning COP26 because it's highly related to COVID, in my view. Right? It's highly related to COVID. COP26 failed. In any real way, it failed. It was a talk shop. Now, even the oil companies, which Clean Climate is kind of antagonistic towards the carbon industry, the oil companies, they sent 500 lobbyists to lobby these 200 world leaders and ministers of government, and there's a whole bunch of people showed up at COP26, right? Ministers and energy ministers and oil ministers from different countries. And the oil companies, Exxon and Shell and all these companies, they sent, especially corporate America, they sent 500 lobbyists to, and you know what a lobbyist, they actually pay, it's a glorified word for bribery, right? Corporate and government bribery. But that's what I thought at COP26. 500 lobbyists showed up, and they came there to give money to whoever would take it if they would back off from clean climate mandates, which is commands to clean up the climate. And so COP26 failed for whatever reason, whether the lobbyists did it or the inaction of world leaders or the bureaucracy, whatever it is, COP26 didn't achieve the goals that they set out to achieve. Now, what are those goals? So we dealt with the show, with this topic in a show, was it last year or earlier this year? Well, several shows really. before the 1 hour a day started. So I want to recap all that. There are three things as we move into the future. The world has three agendas, if I may use that word. The first one is the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals are 19 goals that the United Nations came up with to improve the state of the world. So this book, Mark Carney's book, it says at the bottom, if you can read that, at the bottom here, it says, towards building a better world. Values towards building a better world, right? A better world for all. Building a better world for all. I can't get it close enough to the camera. Any of your cameras, let me try this one. Yeah, if you can look at that, it says building a better world for all, right? So that's what the 19 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, they were developed by the United Nations before all that happened, around the year 2000, they came up with 15 goals. Was it 15? Or 9 goals, something like that, 9 or 10 goals, around that. They call it Millennial Development Goals, right? And so these goals were implemented up to 2015. After 2015, when the Millennial Development Goals were achieved, and you can Google this and see what those goals are, right? At the UN, Millennial Development Goals. After that happened, in 2015, the time frame for the Millennial Development Goals ran out. So they came up with a new set of goals, and they called it the Sustainable Development Goals, or Sustainability Development Goals, which is SDGs. And 19 of those goals exist today, and they're aiming to achieve those goals by 2025. They might push it to 2030, but the goal is by 2025. These 19 goals, which are global, it's a United Nations thing that every single country in the world signed on to, must be achieved. Keep that in mind. The SDG goals, which are 19 goals. The second agenda that the world has, when I say the world, I mean the planners behind the scenes, the thinkers, the masterminds, who are developing the blueprint for how the world should be. There is such a thing. There are such people. They have mapped out these three main agendas. There are more agendas, but these three main ones, which are global and would affect you and would affect me and every single human being on the planet. So the first is the SDGs, 19 development goals. The second is in 2020, the whole world, people are kicking up a stink against something called the Great Reset. Remember the Great Reset? Do you think the world leaders came up with these catchphrases and then they just threw them in the garbage? No, those things are in the works, but because the public was so, my theory is, the public was so against these things that they pulled back from the public domain, or maybe bad PR. But one of the problems too is we don't really have professional mass media anymore. We don't have people digging to find information and investigative journalists going out and finding out what's going on anymore. The mass media has been decimated all over the world, and so these things are happening behind the scenes and nobody's really thinking of it. You have journalists on CNN would be more interested in Kim Kardashian and Snoop Dogg and pop culture, right? Nonsense. Like Will Smith's movie Richard, which is Serena and Venus, did well, and I'm glad the movie's coming out and all that, but a lot of the media is focused on this, Oprah and all of them, about this movie. And they ignore everything about COVID, they ignore everything about what is going on in the world. It's crazy. When I talk about people who do inspirational and motivational stuff, ignoring the context of the world, Oprah is a classic example. She never talked, and I'm not criticizing her, you can't criticize Oprah. She's an icon. But what I'm saying is, she doesn't talk about the world and world affairs and COVID and all that is going on. She focuses on celebrities, right? And this box that she puts people in. And of course, the world rewards her tremendously. But anyway, we are not that. We are different. We are looking into the context of things. So the three agendas are SDGs, 19 development goals at the United Nations level, which means every single country has to be on board and came on board and signed on board. The second agenda was the Great Reset. The Great Reset was the brainchild, well, the name of it, but the brainchild of Prince Charles of England. He came up with the name, allegedly, and that's what they say. He did interviews and kind of, not admit it, but reporters put it to him and he didn't respond, so it means maybe he did come up with a name. The Great Reset, which means, and it came out of the World Economic Forum, that the world must be reset. Things are now working in America and Canada and Europe especially, which is an older civilization. Infrastructure is falling apart, roads are falling apart, bridges. The roads and the bridges in America and Canada are over 70 years old. The canals and everything, right? The entire infrastructure that runs these cities and countries are over 50 years old, and they're too old. This is why Biden, and this is why this is so important. We need to look into the big picture and the context, right? And I want to spend this show emphasizing some of these things. This is why Biden passed he got one program passed through the Congress and the Senate, and the second was passed by the House last week, the Congress, and it's going to the Senate, and it will be passed. But Biden has earmarked over $3 trillion. This is the first time in America's history, or any country's history, on the face of the earth, that in 1 year, under one president, they've earmarked $3 trillion to remake the society, to remake all the bridges and the roads and buildings and bring internet to communities and healthcare and social services for daycare and all those things. Canada is doing the same thing. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Canada is his biggest program now. He's coming out with a big budget because he was just re-elected. But one of his bigger programs is to have daycare at $10 per day throughout the country, and he's signing deals with all the provinces to make this happen. So healthcare, social services, infrastructure development, it's all under the Great Reset. And this Great Reset, the brainchild of Prince Charles, with Mark Carney on board, he was part of it, but they put it through the World Economic Forum, and every country in the world signed on to it. Every country in the world has to do that. You got to not repair, but replace your infrastructure. Biden even talked about lead pipes, the pipes in the sewage system, the pipes in the water system. The average human being doesn't know what's going on. But we got to pull out all those old pipes, lead pipes. When you open your tap in these countries that were developed for 50, 60 years, 40 years, lead is coming through the tap. People hardly in Canada and America drink tap water because the tap water is contaminated, right? You use bottled water or filtered water. And Europe is the same thing. The newer emerging economies like Brazil, China, South Africa, the BRICS country, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But other countries as well, like the Asian tigers and all those people. They are all those newly developed countries. They don't have to remake their infrastructure. They can move straight into the digital age and build new things like what China is doing and India is doing. But countries that were developed for many, many decades, they have to pull down everything. They have to disrupt everything. They have to break things apart and remake the society. This is called under the heading of the Great Reset through the World Economic Forum. This is happening. Okay? So we have the Sdgs, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, 19 goals. We have the Great Reset, and we have the third agenda, which was COP26, was supposed to kind of heal the wound, so to speak, which is clean climate, the clean climate agenda. So Mark Carney is the one who took on the clean climate agenda. Prince Charles from England took on the leadership, kind of the patronage leadership, not the executive leadership, because that a lot of people don't know what, but he is the brainchild, well not the brainchild, but the patron leader behind, patronage leader behind the Great Reset. And then of course you have, a lot of people are involved with him, of course, not only him. And then you have the Sustainable Development Goals, which came out of the United Nations. Now there's an organization in the world called the Elders. And the Elders, but they were formed before, but they really got vitalized when Nelson Mandela became a member of the Elders. The Elders are a group of former heads of state, like the Prime Minister of Sweden and Denmark, and Mandela was part of it. And now you have different people, and people are like thinkers in the world, like Bill Gates and Richard Branson and all those guys. Richard Branson, they're from the Virgin brand. They are advising the elders, and the elders have been given the task to implement the sustainable development goals to make sure that they're implemented. And some of those goals they're quite interesting. Some of it is guaranteed basic income, or there's another name for guaranteed basic income. I forget what it is. But basically, universal basic income, or guaranteed basic income. Now we saw this last year during COVID, where the governments around the world said we're going to give money to people. No questions asked. This is a form of guaranteed basic income or universal basic income. That's one of the goals of the Sustainable Development Goal. That everybody should get around $1,000 a month, globally, worldwide. And you have to implement that system. You have to change laws. You have to change the thinking of people, because a lot of people will be against it, and people say, oh, what will happen to the economy? They don't have an understanding of how technology can make things happen. But you got to go through all those mindsets and all that to change. When you do disruption, because what they're doing, these three things, Sustainable Development Goals, the Great Reset, and the Clean Climate Agenda, before they can actually deliver the promises that they give to humanity, they have to disrupt a whole bunch of stuff. The Clean Climate Agenda has to disrupt all the gas stations, all the gasoline machines that are running, all the whole oil industry, which runs the world. So the Rockefellers and all of them could end up losing a lot of wealth. Of course, they're seeing the writing on the wall. They're futurists as well, and they're repositioning themselves, even the Rockefeller family. So, and even the Sustainable Development Goals, you gotta disrupt the whole economic order to deliver things like Sustainable Development Goals, universal health care, which is now rolled out in America through the Obamacare. Biden said, I think he did a tweet today that said when he came into office, 22 million Americans didn't have basic access to health care. Now, it's down to 2 million. So 20 million got universal health care. That's part of the Sustainable Development Goals that Biden is implementing through his policies. Canada has universal health care. England has it, so some countries have it. And then, of course, universal secondary education. So a lot of countries in the world don't make sure that their citizens go to secondary schools. They might have universal nursery or even elementary, but not secondary or higher learning, right? So that's part of the Sustainable Development Goals. All these things have to be implemented very, very fast. So this is 2021, 2022 in a month's time. We have 3 years to 2025 when the Sustainable Development Goals, 19 goals must be implemented. They might push some of it to 2030, but most of it has to be by 2025. Clean Climate Agenda by 2030, when gasoline cars will be banned and gas stations will be shut down everywhere and charging stations will be set up, right? This is the world we're moving into, and we have to consider the context. We can't do the quality of life unless we know the world we're moving in. How can you write your future if you don't know what the future is going to be like, right? So context is important, and we study that, and we want to share that with you. And today we're dealing with it through in COVID, to see what's going to happen with COVID. Now, in this winter, we have winter in our part of the world. In some parts it's not winter, but even globally, right? It's really changing. The world is changing. The world is transforming. Change is a small word. Transforming is the bigger word. So the time frame for this kind of thing is very, very short. You got to push it, right? The people who want it implemented, the visionaries of the world, and they have a good heart. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing these people. They want good for humanity. Whether they could kick against the evil in human nature and actually achieve good is a different question. But they do want to improve human society. Bill Gates and all the billionaires, Elon Musk and everybody, they want to see good things happen for humanity. Nobody's out there thinking I'm going to destroy the world, unless it's a Hitler or something, right? But people generally want to see, and it's part of their ego as well. They want to do good, right? So people praise you and say, oh, that guy did amazing stuff in life, like all the greats, right? People want to be great. Bill Gates want to be known as an evil guy. No, he wants people to love him and adore him. So he does good. He does a lot of good. His critics interpret it a different way, but the guy does try to be good. All of them. Bezos, everybody. People might hate them because of the money they have, but this world has nothing to do with money you have. It has to do with what is your influence and what is your power. And if money is the way for influence and power, money is just the tool. Influence and power is what they're after. And And that's what's, we all want that. We don't, might not articulate it that way, but we all want some kind of influence and power and to be admired by people, right? That's sort of the basic human motivation. But I digress again. This time frame to achieve these agendas, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Great Reset, and the Climate Agenda is very, very short. You're looking at within 10 to 15 years, right? So SDGs by 2030, the latest 2025, most of it has to be done. The Great Reset is a 5-year program. By 2025, it should be done. The world will look brand new. All the roads that are breaking up, even in Canada, you go to Toronto. Today I was in Toronto driving around one of the main streets, and it's so broken up. It's heartbroken to see that, because once this was such a nice street, and they're trying to repair parts of it. So, but it's all falling apart, right? The infrastructure has gotten old, and now they have to put in new train tracks, which they're doing in Toronto and some places and all that. So we're going to see a brand new world within 5 years with the Great Reset. And then clean climate. Clean climate is going to radically change every single thing by 2035, 2040. And of course, when you have the metaverse that Zuckerberg talked about come into play, then you have satellite internet that gives free Wi-Fi to every human being all over the planet, from Google and Microsoft and Amazon and those companies that are throwing satellites into the air, and China and Russia and all of them. When you have that kind of world in place, think by 2035 how different this planet Earth will be. And if we're altering the future and we're designing our path forward within 5 years, 10 years, we should know what kind of context we'll be living in. Because we could write a life plan and design our future, and it's nowhere near where the world is. So we're totally off track. So we have to know our context. So, okay, let me rubber hits the road now. When you take SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, plus the Great Reset, plus the Clean Climate Agenda, it's a heavy program within a short time. Because even if they thought about these things since the Paris Agreement was signed for clean climate, and they did nothing, right? It didn't help. And whether you're for clean climate or not is not the question here. The fact is, the people who that's the wrong word. The people who manage is the word I would use. The word I would use is manage. The people who manage the world, they decided that based on data, based on science, based on statistics, that the industrial age after 120 years or more has caused damage to the very air that we breathe, right? We are making the planet dead instead of taking all the life out of the planet. Even the air that we breathe now is polluted. And it is, right? I mean, if you go to certain cities like Beijing, China, but even other cities as well, India, just shut down a city, I think last week, because of pollution. It was so, in the day, it was cloudy with pollution, not the clouds. It was like carbon monoxide everywhere. They had to tell people to stay home and shut the city down. Millions of people. This happened in India last week or the week before. So we are killing the planet literally by polluting the air and also cutting down all the trees. So we cut down live, living, breathing trees and forests to build highways, to put in steel and concrete and bitumen and tar. And so you say to me, well, we need to do that because we got to drive, right? Yeah, and then you take your car and you go on that same road, which you kill millions of trees to create that highway, and you drive at 200 miles per hour, I'm exaggerating, and you go to a job and you pay your bills and you come home and you add to the pollution because the car is polluted. And you say to me, but that's civilization, that's progress. Yes, it is civilization, yes, it is progress, but it's not done sustainably. So the Clean Climate Agenda is saying to us, just like you sweep, mop, and wipe, and clean your house, you have to clean your house. I don't think anybody lives in their house without cleaning it. Even if it's a 1 year spring cleaning, some people clean their house every single day, or every weekend, or every month, however often you clean your house, you'll have to clean your house. Or dust is going to be everywhere, pollution is going to be everywhere, and you can't even breathe, you can't even live in it. You won't be healthy, you'll have respiratory problem. Now, that is a microcosm. Your house is a microcosm of the bigger world, of the global village. We are pouring dust and stuff from our manufacturing plants into the air. We're cutting down the trees to build buildings and what we call development. We have these metaphors for things, right? It's development. If we cut down all the trees and fill up all the pure water streams and put in dead buildings that don't breathe and highways with steel and concrete and bitumen, it's development, it's progress. We're lying to ourselves, we're lying to the world. I'm not advocating for anybody. That's my view. That's my view. But clean climate is the same as if you clean your house. You have to clean the planet, right? And so these guys who are running the world, that's what they're doing, based on data and science and stuff, right? And so they came up with these 3 programs: Clean Climate Agenda, which COP26 earlier this month, the first 12 days of this month, was supposed to. The world leaders were supposed to deal at COP26 with a lot of these issues and say this is how we're going to implement it, these new things, without people freaking out, without the public and the voters freaking out and throwing politicians out of office and protesting on the streets, right? How do we achieve these things and still communicate it to the public in a way that we get the mandate of the public? And what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did in my view, a wise thing when he went to elections. A lot of people criticized elections and said he spent $75 million for elections. They don't know what they're talking about. These people don't study anything. They just fume with their emotions. What Prime Minister Trudeau did was he needed a mandate to say, I'm going to implement the Great Reset and the Climate Agenda and SDGs, and I can only do it if the voters give me that mandate at elections. And so he got the mandate, so he went to COP26 and said Canada can do whatever it wants because now we have the mandate. And we can go to Parliament and get laws changed and all that. Because a big part of it is changing legislation and changing laws, right? And so I'm not going to sit here and say, or do this show, or talk to people and say whether things are bad or good. That's not my job. My job as a media person is to state the facts and you decide. You come to your own conclusion. I might state my views, but I'm not telling you to follow my own views. Research these things and see if you align with them or not. But a lot of the world, the public, the voters, because there's no access to real information in mass media, and people don't even read. Mark Carney went to the trouble and investment to put this book out. Of course, he made a lot of money on it, but he did go to the trouble to write this book. How many people read it? How many people would pick up that book and read it? Trust me. I know people who are readers and who are around me. Maybe the mayor read it, obviously. Nobody else that I know has read this book. So how do you know what's coming in the future if you don't do the research, if you don't put in the work? Now, a key thing that Mark Carney talks about, this is where we have a short time, so I'm going to wrap up as soon as possible. Mark Carney's philosophy for how we create this new future with SDGs and clean climate and Great Reset is we change the motivation of companies, countries, and citizens. People are motivated by profit. People are motivated by money. That's how the industrial age worked. And I'm going to rush through these things now because we're coming to close. For the entire industrial age, and even before that, in the feudal age, what motivated people a lot was money. In the feudal age, it was more power. Like people wanted to be aristocrats and noble and develop their bloodline and their genealogy and all those things. But the industrial age, which brought meritocracy and kind of equality and liberty to everybody, what equalized the world was money. And everybody wanted money. Everybody was after profit. Companies wanted profit. Countries looked at their GDP and think we need to improve our GDP, which is profit. Individuals worked to pay bills, but they also looked at their bank account and their investments and said we need to pour money into our investments and increase our bank account year after year after year, and also buy up assets, right? Like their house and stuff they invest. Housing became an investment. Your shelter became an investment. It didn't become a necessity. So the world said, you live in a house, let it be your investment. Profit motive. Everybody lived for profit and profit and profit. Mark Carney is a radical revolutionary. And after spending time at the Central Bank of Canada as the governor, as the British Central Bank governor, these two main banks in the world, well, main except for the Federal Reserve in America, they control a lot of wealth, right? He was in charge of both. He came out of that atmosphere, that banking atmosphere, export and banking, and he said, you know what? The profit motive doesn't work. If we were to achieve the Great Reset and clean climate and the SDGs, which cares about people more than corporations, we can't care about profit anymore. So what do we do? What do we care about? And so Mark Carney came up with this idea that what we care about are values. Values. We change the values of human beings, right? This is a crucial thing. This is a fundamental thing. So the world is going through a disruptive phase, kind of a chaos, and the end goal is that human beings will no longer live for material stuff, but they would live for values. Of course, you have to provide your basic needs, and people would have still top desires. People would still want fancy yachts and nice cars and mansions, but that would not be society. Peer pressure, if you will, and even laws and the social contract, because that's something else we will talk about on the show one day. The social contract would be one of what are your values, what are my values? How do we relate to each other as human beings and in the country and in society in terms of our values, and not how much money I can make from you or how much money you can make from me. Not transactions, but what values are we living, what human values are we living with. So I say all that, and our show is coming to an end, to say, because the show is about COVID, and so far I have already talked about COVID, but the reason, this is my theory, this is not a conspiracy, but the reason COVID had to be rolled out, if I may use that word and be very passive and abstract with it, is to get the world to a place where you could implement, governments, for example, could implement states of emergency, and in those states of emergency, they could pass the laws that they need to, the new laws that they need to bring in the future, right? Because even parliamentarians were freaking out about new laws that showed up in Parliament. They would debate and defeat it and vote, right? In Parliament would vote. But in a state of emergency, that doesn't happen. Like, for example, when Trudeau said, with help from the NDP, the one French party in the Parliament, that he got support from that party, which is leftist. They decided they're going to give Canadians $2,000 a month last year to deal with COVID. It was because of COVID they could pass that legislation in a state of emergency, which is kind of a sustainable, not sustainable, universal basic income, a guaranteed basic income that lasted, I don't know, maybe a year. I don't know how long it lasted. It's over now, but they were able to experiment with that system, the universal basic income and guaranteed basic income, worldwide, countries all over the world. COVID allowed that to happen. And COVID is, if you will, you can look at it this way, is the cover under which the people who are inventing the new future will change the world, right? COVID is the covering they need, the mantle, if you will. Because if they go without an emergency, without chaos in the world, without some disruptive force, then they can't implement the future. Nobody wants to give up on their status quo. Nobody wants to say, I'm going to change my job from working at the gas station and let them tear down the gas station. I'm just using an example. And put in a battery charging station for Tesla cars. Nobody would say that. Nobody would say, yes, I care about the planet, I'm going to lose my job at the gas station. Put in a charging station instead of the gas station, you don't need people to work there. Nobody's going to do that. So the whole world, the status quo, what people are doing for a living, the profit motive, nobody can give that up easily. It's embedded in our nature after generations, right? To live this way, to live in a world that is materialistic and consumerist and products are important rather than people. But all that is going to change, and that is why we are seeing COVID raise its head again. So my prediction, this is a prediction, is that what is going on in Europe with COVID will spread to America and Canada and globally within the next month or two, maybe in January or sometime next year, early next year. Because, well, maybe not in America so much, because Biden is able to do what, unless the Senate stops his next bill for before they build back America is what he calls it, which I don't think would happen. But America might not be as affected as they were under Trump with COVID, because for the simple reason that America is taking the action that they need to do, which COP26 was supposed to make happen with these 200 world leaders. Instead, the lobbyists came and everybody backed down. So America might not face it as big as under Trump, but some countries where there is so much pushback against the Great Reset, SDGs, and the Clean Climate Agenda, there will be a heavy COVID resurgence, right? Sadly. But the reason, don't freak out with COVID. That's what I want to say on the show, right? People who follow us, this context that we're moving into is a period of disruption. It's a period of chaos. Not massive chaos, but disruptive chaos. Because you can't put in something new unless you dismantle the old, right? And we don't have enough time to slowly dismantle the old. We got to do it fast, because within 5 years, 10 years, the world has to fundamentally go through a revolution where gas stations don't exist and it's all charging stations. That kind of revolution is just a decade. Within a decade we have to reach there. Humanity has to reach there, right? And so that's why don't freak out about COVID. Just be safe, wear a mask, do what you need to do. It's a real thing, it's not a fake thing. It was, I believe that it comes on, let me be very vague here, it comes under social engineering, global social engineering, but I wouldn't go more than that if you want to know what that is. But COVID is here again, and the reason it's here again is because COP26 failed, and because humanity needs to implement the SDGs, 19 goals from the United Nations. The Clean Climate Agenda must be implemented by the year 2030, 2035, it must be well entrenched in the world. And the Great Reset, the pulling down of all these old infrastructure, roads, highways, bridges, pipes pulled out from the ground, electric wires, all those things that we pulled up. It's a time of that kind of disruption and dismantling, and we will go through that maybe for the next 4 or 5 years. Now, some people would prosper, and I can by, if we're wise and we see what the future holds, we at the Qualified Life can move into the future and benefit from it, because we see the future, we see the big picture, we're prepared for it, and we're going to move into it in a way that is conducive and aligned with what that big picture is, because we study it. We're not going into the future blindly, but we also want to share the information that we have with you. So if you're listening to the show, you're listening to the video after it's over, whatever, however you were listening to these words, connect with us and let us walk this path together, because it's in community we would come out of it. I mean, I know COVID is about isolation and disrupting everything that is public, but we still need to, maybe through digital platforms, we still need to be there for each other and encourage each other and help each other, share information and that kind of thing. But rest assured that at the end of COVID, we're going to have a brand new world, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be beautiful, at least for a time, not forever, because man being who he is, right? Man, human nature. But this disruptive period, the people who are protesting and demanding that don't shut down society and don't do this and don't do that, they have no idea what the future holds, what horizon man is heading into. And that's why they're freaking out. And a lot of people are freaking out. But if you know what's going on, you won't freak out. You will love what's going on. I love what's going on. I mean, I'm careful with COVID. So far, I haven't had COVID. I haven't been tested positive for COVID. I got a second shot and got really sick for a few days. I was 3 or 4 days in bed. Just fatigue, no pain. It was weird. There was no pain, there was no cough, there was no headache, there was nothing. All I felt was an absolute tiredness. The vaccine was so, the second dose was so, pronounced, right? But anyway, I would encourage you not to freak out. Don't go protesting. Don't go out there and try to stop the train from moving, from bulldozing ahead, right? Let's reform society. Let's allow the powers that be to fix all the stuff that is falling apart, all the roads and the infrastructure. Let's allow the authorities to reform buildings, bring in smart buildings instead of dead buildings. Let's allow the authorities and the powers that be to clean up the climate. Let's allow it to happen. Let's cooperate and let's work together to make it happen. One day we're going to have this kind of discussion again with the mayor of the city. He's somebody I like to talk to about these things. Maybe even our MP. I have to get in touch with my MP and invite him to come on the show. But anyway, thank you for being with us. Today's show will help with COVID, and you won't hear a lot of COVID throughout the whole show, but you're going to hear about why COVID came and why it's coming back and how to approach it, how to deal with it. Okay? So thank you so much for joining me today. I shall see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye.